Welcome to Interior Analysis. Today we are doing Infinity War, and since the MCU isn't really Carla's jam, and since, I've seen a decent number of MCU movies, but I'm not a huge fan of it, we brought in a guest star who is somewhat of a MCU fan, the cartoonist for the Triangle, Jay Kelly.
Hey, everybody.
When I brought this to you, I asked, I want to do an MCU movie before Endgame, and which one do you want to do? And this was your pick, so do you want to, is there any, quick reasons why you picked this one in particular? I think there's a few obvious ones, but...
So, a few things that set Infinity War apart from the rest of the Marvel movies was changing the quote-unquote Marvel formula, Thanos arguably being the focus or the main character of the movie, and the movie being incomplete, and seeing the movie as a standalone movie.
Okay. So those are that was the topics you picked. So when we say Marvel formula, what comes to mind for me is when you have basically the carbon copy of the superhero origin story. Is that kind of what you meant by that? Where it's they get their powers, learn how to use them, become less of a terrible person by the end of the movie.
Yeah, along the lines of that, and I'd also say stakes, because stakes and also a little bit with villains as well. A lot of the villains were one-off villains that wouldn't return besides Loki.
He doesn't even return as a villain, I think, does he?
Yeah, no, not since Avengers, really. He's just kind of a chaotic, neutral character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought for stakes, I don't think I was actually talking to my roommate about this today because we were talking about going to see Endgame, and I was saying I don't think you can really put the stakes any higher than this in just any movie in general without it being totally ridiculous. Half the universe it kind of maxes out. I don't always love it when a movie does too much with stakes, but I thought in this case it made it better that it was as huge as it is.
Yeah, I think it fixed. I definitely loved for example, Civil War. It was Captain America. I was going to call it Avengers Civil War.
It basically is Avengers Civil War.
Thor and Hulk are missing, but it's...
Yeah, that was more heroes that came together in that than either of the two Avengers movies before it, so...
Avengers 2.5. I want to say it fixed the problem with Civil War, because with Civil War, there was, there weren't many stakes involved. You didn't believe that the heroes were going to actually kill each other. And,
yeah, that's fair.
There was the airport fight, and then, that was one of the biggest fights of the movie, and then there was the fight with Captain America and Bucky versus Iron Man at the end. And nothing really changed beside the fact that Captain America and Iron Man broke up. Mm-hmm. But as far as, stakes, feeling the heroes are in danger, which is what kind of makes some of these movies exciting.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because there is kind of an invincibility mode there.
Plot armor.
Plot armor is definitely something that comes up... not that they talk about it, but it's something that shows up or is highlighted in this movie, especially compared to the other ones. I thought with Civil War, in terms of tying it in with this movie, the ending where you've got half of the Earth-based Avengers on one side and half on the other, and they're not united. I felt like that could have been dug into a little bit more here, because we see at a lot of points, it's no question that, if all of them, even just, all the ones on Earth banded together to fight Thanos, they could win. And since they're separated, that doesn't happen. And we feel it a bit at the beginning when, Tony Stark doesn't want to call Steve to get them together and coalesce. And that ends up, not really being a problem because Thanos' followers show up, a minute later. Yeah. But... I thought we could have felt that a little bit more as a reason that they lost. Yeah. Didn't really come up as something that was highlighted.
Yeah. There was a behind the scenes video I saw where I think it was either the Russos or Feige himself. He was describing how do we make the Avengers. He didn't say lose this battle because that would have definitely given away spoilers.
Right.
But he said how do we make them less invincible? He said to split them up, divide them, so they're stronger as a unit. So in this movie, they definitely there was a battle on Titan, and then there was
the one in Wakanda, and then there's the one in New York. But that wasn't against Thanos.
Yeah, that was just in the beginning. But yeah, you're right. I agree. That could have played a much bigger role.
Not necessarily that the conflict is ongoing, but that when you feel the consequences. Because, like, in this one, like, the first Avengers movie is basically them. Like, it's not really about them fighting Loki. It's about, can they actually collaborate?
Yeah.
And that wasn't really the deal here. Like, they had it a little, but not so much.
Also, the permanent deaths of some of the main characters.
Right, okay, so before we get into that, what do you mean by permanent in this case?
Not Thanos' snap.
Okay.
The ones that died by Thanos, but not from the snap.
So you think, and I think most of us think, they're going to come back.
Yeah, after the snap. Like, after the movie, when the final shot on Thanos, you're just looking out into the sunset, and then the credits played, I was like, wait, that's it? And then I
was really surprised that the snap happened when I first saw it.
I didn't think he was going to win at all. I was like, how are they going to stop him?
Right. I'd heard it was a two-parter, so I assumed that, like, I guess I wasn't thinking of the whole, like, time travel element. But I had assumed that, like, the first half, maybe he gets, like, I don't know, 3 out of 6 stones. And it feels like he's on top. Like, a bunch of characters die.
Yeah.
I'd heard that, like, a lot of characters were going to die and then come back, even, like, months before Infinity War came out. I was hearing that. But I was really surprised when the snap happened. I was like, oh, wait, he won.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a permanent victory, but it was still shocking when it first happened.
But, I mean, as far as, like, some of the other, like, deaths that weren't to the snap, like Heimdall and Loki at the very beginning of the movie, I don't think Loki's coming back from that one. And then Gamora, when he threw her off the cliff for the Soul Stone.
Yeah, Gamora, I think, is a toss-up. The other two might not, but...
okay, you might be right with that, like... If they return the Soul Stone or something like that, maybe.
I mean, that's kind of more like predicting Endgame, but like there is a sense that we already know that a lot of them are coming back because you've got like there have been trailers for the next Spider-Man movie.
Oh yeah,
that's not really something that they're trying to hide. But I think there is a question of like, is everyone going to come back, and like how is that going to happen? And even without that, we do feel those deaths at the end because it's like major characters who normally have that plot armor.
I was initially like upset once the snap happened, and then the movie was over. I was like, wait, that movie, what? Like they're just gonna stop there? And then I initially was like thinking that movie sucked, man. That left me so like unsatisfied because the heroes didn't actually win.
Well, I mean, I thought that was more fun because like. I think there's definitely something to going into a movie and knowing that they're going to win. Like I love it when a movie can actually convince me that like, oh wait, maybe they won't. Yeah. And like it makes it so much better when they do. Yeah. Which I think is something that's kind of lacking. Like even in this one, the deaths don't feel like we know intuitively that they're not permanent.
And then the final death being Vision when he gets the last stone. Side note here, like, am I the only one? I feel like I'm the only one that could not care less about the relationship between Scarlet Witch and Vision. Like, I didn't feel anything whatsoever when she had to remove the stone from his head and everything. Like,
well, I'm not someone who's like the most invested in any of these characters. Watching it the second time, though, I think they did a good job with that because, like, I didn't see Age of Ultron, so like I'm not that up on like all of what Vision is or whatever, but it seemed to be hinting in a few scenes of Infinity War that he's kind of becoming like a little more human. Yeah, and I liked that they took the time to focus on his relationship with Scarlet Witch and then flip it around like that. Like that was a good choice. I agree, it might not be the most. They may not have the most chemistry if that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's maybe one. That may not have been the most like. The deepest relationship they could have picked.
And then just Vision as the character, really briefly. Like in Civil War, he was sort of like people compared him to Superman because he was like the one character that could actually just defeat everybody if he wanted to, or I felt like he could. And
I kind of feel that with Doctor Strange. I feel like if there's one Avenger who's kind of like the best on his own, it's Doctor Strange. Although Vision would probably be up there.
Yeah. And then, you know, in this, he was kind of just, he wasn't really doing much after he got, like, sneakily stabbed in that, I don't know what city or country.
Yeah, it was in, like, Scotland or somewhere in Europe.
But, like, after that, he was kind of just useless.
They don't cut back to those characters very much. But there is kind of the debate whether they're going to sacrifice Vision for that stone or if they're going to, like, try to save him.
Yeah. I thought they're, like, going into the movie, I felt like I just kind of knew Vision would die because of the stone in his head, but at the point when they were in Wakanda and Shuri trying to remove the stone from his head, I was like, there might be a possibility, like, they could stop this, but then, you know, that didn't happen.
One thing that was kind of cool, I think, or at least a decent choice, I didn't find that it made it a better experience for me, but I think it was a good choice, was that they have to, like, make these choices to protect the stone versus protect someone. Like, and, like, the heroes do, at a couple points, they choose everyone over, like, one person. Like, when Quill and Gamora, when Thanos gets the third stone, and Quill promised to, like, kill Gamora if Thanos got her. Mm. He doesn't end up actually being able to, but he pulls the trigger, and, like, Thanos... I don't know that that was great as, like, a villainous choice for Thanos. Mm-hmm. Like, it didn't really tell us more about him, I thought, but it was good, I think, like, making that tense moment to see, like, is he willing to do it or not? Yeah. And same with Scarlet Witch and Vision.
Want to move on to Thanos as the focus/main character?
Okay, yeah. What's your argument for that Thanos is the protagonist?
Right off the bat, like, after, like, the movie's over, you realize he's one. Looking at it from, like, a screenwriting perspective, normally the protagonist is the one that's supposed to come out on top. Or
in most cases, yeah.
Yeah, in most cases.
Definitely for a movie like this.
Yeah.
So.
Thinking about it, like, the first time we see him, like, they've been building him up for years since the first Avengers.
Yeah.
And then the first time we see him in this movie, he's killed, like, all of these... I don't think all of the Asgardians are supposedly gods, but these somewhat strong beings. He's killed half of... That's another thing. I don't know if he actually killed half of them. Like, there's people are saying, like...
Right, was that just, like, a battle, or was it...
Yeah, I'm not entirely
sure. Was there, like, a scene at the end of Ragnarok that was like that? I didn't see Ragnarok, but I heard that it kind of set up that opening.
Yeah, so, spoilers for that movie, too. Asgard blew up, and they were like... Thor said something like, Asgard is not a place, it's a people. Or somebody said that. And they start, like, just wandering off in space in this ship.
Yeah, and that's where we open.
And that's where we open with
Infinity War, right?
Yeah. So first time we see him in this movie, he's killed half of these strong beings that are looked at as God.
Or, like, I don't know much about the rest of the Thor universe, but, like, they're superhuman. Yeah. Like, even the regular ones, right?
Exactly. And then the first time we see him, he's, like, shrouded in smoke, like a mysterious figure, even though we've seen him. And he's, like, standing over a battered Thor who's supposed to be... Even in Thor Ragnarok, they made a joke about it. He's, like, one of the strongest Avengers. But
yeah. I would say in this movie, he definitely is the one that, like... I mean, obviously, at the end, he's the one who has the best chance solo of defeating Thanos.
So he's standing over a battered Thor, and he already has the Power Infinity Stone in his hand, and it's speculated he grabbed the stone from, I think it was the Nova Force. Did you see Guardians, the first Guardians?
I saw the first one, not the second. So, like, I'd had the setup of the Power Stone, but I wasn't... To me, the first time I watched it, they were all kind of, 1 out of 6. I didn't think much about, like, what each one did.
So he got it from these, like, space police. He already had that stone. They didn't even show it, but he's already in possession of Infinity Stone. And, of course, at the end of the scene, you see he, like, takes on the Hulk, who is the actual strongest Avenger, one-on-one.
That was kind of a question I had, though. Like, so I remember from the first Guardians movie, like, not everyone can just, like, use the Infinity Stones. Like, it takes all 4 or 5 of them together to be able to just hold it. Mm-hmm. And the villain in that movie is, like, someone who's strong enough to use one. Yeah. And the whole thing with the gauntlet, I think, is, like, that lets Thanos use it without being, like, overcharged or something. Yeah. I just kind of wanted to know, like, and maybe you can answer this and maybe not, how, like, intrinsically powerful is he? We see that he gets more dangerous as he gets more stones, but, like, without them, what is he? And, like, why does he have this following? Like, what is it about just him that makes him like this?
I think in the comics, he's viewed as, like... I know they call him the Mad Titan, but I don't know what connotation that has with, like, his actual power level or strength.
Right. I think of Titan as, like... I mean, Greek mythology-wise, that sounds slightly superior to a god.
Yeah. But I think, canonically, in the comics, he's a demigod. Regardless, like, even... You saw him defeat the Hulk, but he wasn't even using the Power Stone.
Right, so that's just him.
Yeah, that's base Thanos, and he's able to do something like that.
Yeah, that was something that kind of went over my head the first time I was watching it, but I think it was kind of a question that I had.
Yeah. Of course, I don't think any, like, normal human or even, like, a superhuman like Captain America or Black Panther or anybody like that could do what he did at the end with the snap, because you saw how, like, the damage it
Oh,
causes
right.
to his
It, like,
arm
basically trashes the gauntlet.
Yeah, exactly. He was really only one of the only beings that could have pulled that off.
Yeah, but he, like, could somebody... I guess this is getting into, like, maybe more information than we have, but, like, could someone else use it, put on the gauntlet and try to use it?
I'm not entirely sure.
That was a question I had as I was watching it, though. I did notice, though, the second time around, his motive is actually pretty well grounded, because, like, after watching it the first time, I was kind of like, okay, he seems like kind of evil for evil's sake. Mm-hmm. But there is actually, in a few scenes, you can see how he's kind of justified in thinking that, like, his goal of genocide actually is a solution, because, like, it worked. Or, like, he thinks it would have saved his planet.
Yeah. And it did save Gamora's planet, actually. He explains that when he's, like, sitting before his
right, he says, like, everything's better there now because of that.
Yeah.
I would have liked to hear him go into a little bit more, like, human nature kind of stuff with that. I think that's a little bit much for, like, a traditional Marvel villain. Maybe he'll do that in Endgame. Mm-hmm. But I think you could have gone into that a little.
Wait, can you explain that a little more?
Well, I don't know, just, like, because he sees it as, like, a solution for everyone. Like, I remember a couple days after seeing it, a friend told me about, like, a tweet that he saw, like, hey, instead of, like, when you got all 6 Infinity Stones, instead of, like, snapping for everyone to die, why not make double the resources? Like, that seems like it would make sense. I don't think that there's, like, anything to totally refute that argument, that, like, you could just use double the resources. But I can see how he has, like, a little bit of, like, a sense that wouldn't work. And, like, going into the human nature side of it more, I think would have justified that more. Like, it's not about the resources, it's about the allocation or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, people's only argument for that was, like, he's the Mad Titan, and he's got to be a villain somehow. Like, you can understand his point, but you wouldn't do it yourself. Something like that.
It felt a little bit like generic Disney villainish to me. I mean, he's definitely a lot better than that, but there is a limit to it.
Yeah.
Like, he's less accessible than some villains. Mm-hmm. So when I hear protagonist in, like, a traditional story sense, that usually is defined by, like, the character that goes through change. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like he does that? I kind of thought he didn't, but, like, I can see how maybe there's something I missed where he did.
No, I don't think he changed. I just think the fact that he achieved his goal. Watching it again, it seemed like he was more of the main character, and all of the Avengers were the side characters.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
Like, with each scene you saw him in, I feel like he was, like, the main focus of the scene. Like, the Avengers were the ones trying to stop him. Oh, here's the thing. The Avengers were the ones trying to stop him, but if they weren't there, he would have tried to complete his goal anyway. Like, normally the villain... the villain is the one out to, defeat the hero or whatever, but he's the one that's trying to complete a goal, and the Avengers are in his way.
Right, that's true, because it's usually not, like, the hero's trying to get something.
Yeah, exactly.
At least in these kinds of movies, it's always the villain has some plan.
Yeah, exactly.
And the hero has to stop him from doing it. Which is kind of the case here, but I agree that it does feel a little more like the tables are turned. Mm-hmm. Especially because, like, in most cases, the Avengers are the ones with the thing Thanos wants.
Yeah.
And usually we see the inverse, where it's like the villain has the powerful object.
Yeah.
So the next topic you had was the movie being incomplete. So what did you mean by that?
Well, initially we knew that this was supposed to be a part 1 of part 2. I don't really, like, I can see both sides of this argument. Like, I don't really have a stance on it, like, that this is still a part 1. They just changed the titles.
Right, because the second one was initially going to be, like, Infinity War part 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see just both sides of the arguments. We know the remaining Avengers will face them in Endgame, and for me, once the movie ended, it did feel incomplete. Like, oh, that's it? Like, they're not gonna beat him in any way?
There wasn't any kind of falling action.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even just, like...
Yeah, there wasn't even much of a conclusion. The last shot we see of the Avengers in the movie is just, like, Captain America sitting on the ground saying, oh, God.
Yeah, and then, all the remaining ones.
Yeah, and then we cut to Thanos, and he smiles, and then that's the end. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, it felt sudden.
Yeah.
Because another movie that, like, has a similarly, like, tragic ending, but it doesn't end, like, instantaneously, like, the second Pirates movie. Sure. Where, like, Jack Sparrow dies, but then there's, like, another 10 minutes and they kind of set up, okay, we're going to go get him in the next movie, which is basically what's going to happen in Endgame, except that, as you're saying, like, they don't set that up. They don't really give you
anything after that.
Yeah, there's no hope.
Yeah, exactly. The ending sort of gave me the same feeling. Like, after I saw that movie, there was a movie I saw back at home called Buried. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I've heard of it. It's like Ryan Reynolds is trapped in, he's buried alive.
Yeah,
right?
in a coffin. And I think I caught it like midway through the movie, but I watched it till the end. And in the end, like, you're hoping the entire time dude's gonna get out of the coffin. Like, he's calling these people, and it gets to, like, I guess the climax of the movie where he's on the phone with some guy and they're like digging and digging. He's running out of oxygen because the dirt is like caving in into the coffin, and the dude on the other line says, "I'm sorry, we're at the wrong grave," and then the dirt fills the coffin, and then that's the end of the movie. Like, Ryan Reynolds just dies. That's it.
That is kind of anticlimactic.
Exactly.
But it's, I like that movies like that exist, like, just to give more of a possibility that, like, there can be a tragic ending like that.
So that's what the ending of this movie kind of left me feeling like. Initially, whenever I went, for whatever reason, whenever I see a movie like that and the hero doesn't win, big thing for me is stakes. Just having the possibility of the hero not winning is good enough for me. But if the hero doesn't actually win, like, that kind of bothers me. And I initially think, oh, this movie sucks. But I think this movie did a good job with it. And with Ryan,
and there's kind of the intrinsic thing with, we know there's going to be more.
Yeah, exactly. But with that Buried movie, like, I just think, wait, what was the point of me watching that if he didn't actually get out?
Yeah, I can see that, especially with a movie like that where I wouldn't think it was trying to, like, prove a point. Like, I can see it sometimes when, like, there's a tragic ending with something like that, like something like Babel. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's it really tries to feel very realistic, and it's not really like sad ending, but like things don't work out well for everyone for sure. But in that one, it's kind of more making a social commentary, which it sounds like Buried isn't. So like I can kind of see the frustration there. Yeah. I do love it though sometimes when you feel the real stakes. Like, I think a very easy comparison to make with Infinity War is Game of Thrones, because you've got a lot of heroes, not all of whom are necessarily going to make it out alive, that you've gotten attached to over however long. And they're finally Infinity War and Endgame, and then for Thrones and Season 8, which is going on right now, they're like finally banding together, like all banding together for the first time and facing one conflict. And I love the idea that for Thrones, they could all die. Like, that is something that Thrones has proven time and time again that it is willing to do.
I don't even watch Game of Thrones, but I know, like, a lot of main characters die. Or characters people are rooting for. And
yeah, it's like 115 named characters, and now there's 35 left. When we were watching the episode on Sunday, I made bets with the people I was watching it, and like one person just said everyone dies, like, and one person was like half, and everyone else was like, these 5 will live, these 5 will die, everyone else gray area. I think it's a good comparison to make, though.
Yeah.
All right, so then your next topic was discussing it as kind of a standalone movie.
Yeah. So at the beginning of the movie, there's exposition through, like, confused characters. Like, that's the best way, one of the quote-unquote best ways to give exposition to an audience who might not know, when, like, Hulk shoots down through, I think it was a Bifrost or something like that, in Doctor Strange's...
the temple, I think, or something.
And he doesn't know what's going on, so, they kind of have to fill in information for each other, because they don't know. Like, Hulk didn't know that the Avengers had broken up like a band, and Doctor Strange and Iron Man and Wong didn't know who Thanos was. So,
it seems a little surprising that Doctor Strange doesn't know who Thanos is,
now
that I'm thinking of it.
Yeah.
Like, he's in touch with all sorts of other, I don't even know what, but...
This was just a side note, but I think they did a good job with that, because there's always that cardinal sin you might see in certain movies where somebody says, well, as you already know...
Oh, yeah. The, like, cheesy exposition character.
Exactly. I don't think it works that well as a standalone movie, because I feel like you definitely have to have background knowledge on these characters, because they don't give origins. They assume anybody who watches this movie is a Marvel fan, and that they've seen
which is
at least a little more than half of the movies they've already had.
Yeah, that was kind of what I told Carla when I told her we were doing this episode. I was like, if you haven't seen any Marvel movies, you're welcome to join us. Do not expect to get what's going on, though.
Exactly. But I feel like they can make that assumption, though. Like, they have that right, because the characters have been around for years.
But it is kind of like, you're either in or you're out by this time.
Yeah. And, like, because the characters have already been established in comic book form, like, even if you didn't see any of the other movies leading up to Infinity War, but you know who Iron Man, Doctor Strange, all of them, if you know who they are.
Even just from, like, existing in, like, a pop culture setting.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's difficult to not know who they are. Like, if you don't know who Superman is. Like,
right.
I feel like they have that sort of, like, pull behind them that, you know, it can work as a standalone movie if you know who the people are.
Right. I think there's a lot of people that you could be very excused for not knowing, though. Like some of the more obscure ones, like who's going to know Falcon who didn't see Winter Soldier? Yeah, I remember last year before Infinity War came out, because I hadn't seen any in a few years, and I'd seen a few, but I also stopped off at Winter Soldier. But I was like, okay, a lot of people were talking about going to see Infinity War, so I was like, all right, I'll see it. What do I need to see to catch up? And it's like, you know, if you get a smattering, you're there. But you kind of think people could maybe come into this fresh and
a little, like, if
get
you
the effect.
For example, if you like read the comics and then just saw this movie, like, I think you'd be a little confused because a few things have changed, like as far as origins go and people's connections and stuff like that.
Yeah, because there's a lot more characters than this, I think, right? And like bringing them together is not necessarily a new thing, but like I feel like Fantastic Four is a group that's supposed to be with the Avengers by this point.
Yeah, I feel like them, and I didn't actually read the Infinity War comic, but I believe the X-Men are also part of it.
Yeah, and obviously, like, studio rights, there's issues with that. And also the fact that all the Fantastic Four movies ended up being terrible, apparently. I only saw one of them, but...
The first one?
I saw the second one in, like, 5th grade and remember it not being great. So, and I've heard that the other ones were just trash.
They're just, But now, with that... is it a merger?
Oh, with Fox?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a question for, like, the past year. Is Fox the one that owns Fantastic Four, though?
Yeah, they own Fantastic Four and X-Men.
I personally like X-Men better than the MCU. Like, I thought Infinity War could have kind of used a little more X-Men kind of stuff in it with, like... Because the fun thing about watching an X-Men fight scene, I think, is always that there's always the one mutant that cancels out the other one, and it's always... Because they focus so much on the character conflicts in those, it's like a matching game. Like, the winner of one battle isn't determined necessarily by, like, who fights the hardest. It's who's on which side. You know, does Magneto have his helmet on? Is Logan, like, incapacitated for whatever reason? Who can Professor X control or whatever? And I love that they play with that so much. And I would have kind of appreciated a little more of that in Infinity War here. I had a few topics I wanted to get into as well, like to continue with that. The main issue I had with this movie, hopefully this won't make big fans too mad, but I think the problems that I have with this movie is like not necessarily within itself. It's a lot of the movies leading up to it.
Okay.
I feel like there's a lot that could be done with something like this where you've got all these characters coming together for the first time, or a lot of them. And, like, they can play off each other in kind of that X-Men way. Or, again, with Thrones, like, we see so often, like, characters that have been established for however many seasons. And then, like, two big ones meet. Like, when Tyrion and Daenerys meet for the first time, I love the dynamic between them because we've gotten that setup. And I felt like that was kind of somewhere that this movie kind of lacked. Because... they're not necessarily fleshed out characters. They're just kind of like big personalities coming together.
Okay, yeah.
And it might, like, if that was something that I felt like they were only kind of capable of doing, might be okay. But, like, I went back and watched the first Avengers movie. And in that one, there's a lot of moments where no real fault to Infinity War in this regard, because 30 characters is a lot different than 6.
Yeah.
But in the original Avengers... each of the characters grows a little bit in that movie. Like, they all have something of an arc. Like, you have moments like when, like a little bit after Tony Stark meets Captain America for the first time, he kind of looks at him as he's walking by and he's like, huh, that's the guy that my dad would never stop talking about all the time growing up. And it's not necessarily huge, but it adds a little more texture to him.
Yeah.
And same with like all the things where there's kind of the question of like, is the Avengers initiative something that can actually work? Like, that's a question throughout the whole thing. And like, Bruce Banner trying to reconcile like being the Hulk and like keeping it together at the same time. And I felt like that was something that you could have done more of in this movie. Not that everyone could have had an arc, but you could have had like fully realized characters playing off each other when they meet, instead of just like Star-Lord and Iron Man like making jabs at each other. And I feel like there's a lot, like they've sacrificed a lot of the nuance for just kind of like making little jokes.
Yeah. I feel like it'd be kind of difficult to do any sort of arcs in a movie with how many characters? 30 plus, whatever.
It's something. It's a lot. I think that would have been a lot to ask as well.
Yeah.
But you could have had some moments where they could have developed a little bit if there had been a little more care put into them in previous movies, I thought.
I think a little problem with that is like they might have already pretty much completed their arcs. Like Iron Man was a really selfish dude in the beginning of the first Iron Man movie, and then by 3 he's like blowing up his suits for Pepper or whatever.
Yeah, with him I think that's fair because he's had a lot more attention. But someone like T'Challa, who's only been in like
one movie,
1 1/4 of a movie, is like, I mean, but he's not. There's nothing like character wise really for him in Civil War. So like he's had one movie, and I think there could have been an opportunity. Like the big final scene of the movie takes place in Wakanda. I think there could have been a moment there where he might have had to make like a choice for the people that he's meant to be serving. I don't know what that might have been, but there's a lot more of an arc that I think we could see from him.
Yeah.
And they kind of wrapped it up a little neatly at the end of Black Panther with that.
Yeah.
And
so with like less established characters, you'd like to see more of a change?
I think with the amount of time that we have with each of these characters, like a lot of them have been here for more than one movie, a lot more than one movie. And they feel very two-dimensional. Like in Avengers, the first one, it felt like the plot of that movie was kind of serving each of the characters' arcs. Like it was about them, and now it feels a lot more like the characters are kind of doing things to serve the universe and like this big long arc and like getting everything set up and whatever.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. Like this has never been done before really, and like it's cool that they do that. But again, going back to Game of Thrones, they do the same thing, and their characters are very fleshed out. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. Whereas, like, the Guardians are just kind of there to, like, be a comedy troupe. And, in my opinion, not that funny of a comedy troupe. Characters like that, there's not really any development with them. On the upside, just a couple last points. Like, from a technical writing perspective, it does an amazing job of balancing characters to their credit. 30 major characters in one movie, that's a huge task to take on. And like making the teams for each of them, like that's not an easy task. Even with just within a scene, like you've got 8 major characters in the scene and we all kind of expect them to do something at some point. 8 is a lot to balance in one scene. And I think like the one on Titan, they managed to do that pretty well.
And I also don't think screen time for them is balanced out. Like I don't feel like until the snap happens, I don't feel like there's like one character that's focused on more than the others, besides Thanos, of course.
I kind of noticed that, like, not to say that this is a problem, but I think if you have, like, if you were going to make this an Avengers movie, it would be Thor. He's kind of the one who gets more individual attention, and, like, we see him progressively taking action to do things instead of just, like, getting to a location for a fight scene. But, yeah, there's a pretty good balance of all of them. Some do take a back seat, but some... that we haven't seen as much of come forward a little bit more, like Gamora. That was actually something else that I think is maybe worth touching on real quick. Like, what did you think of, mostly in terms of Thanos, but maybe in terms of anything, like the fact that he has to kill Gamora to get the Soul Stone?
I mean, I was kind of saddened when it happened, but I don't know.
That's just kind of a moment that I think people go back to. It's a major moment. It's kind of the first... Because, I mean, Heimdall and Loki... I mean, Loki's a villain, basically, and Heimdall... I mean, how many lines does he even have? I haven't seen all the Thor movies, but those are not major deaths, and hers is kind of the first big one.
Yeah.
So, is there... there might not be anything to unpack with that, but do you feel like maybe there is?
Nothing besides the fact that I think we already knew Thanos was a villain, but seeing him kill like a pretty major character, like she was like, I don't want to call her a love interest, but she was part of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And also, there's also the added fact that like she's his adopted daughter.
Right. And he's he obviously he cares for her.
Yeah,
so.
And seeing him kill her in order to do this insane plan he has, I think just showed that, we're not actually supposed to be rooting for this guy.
Yeah, well, I don't know that anyone would have had that
Yeah,
illusion.
exactly, but, I just think it showed him as, like, more of a villain.
Right. I mean, there is a contrast there because we see that, like, the other heroes throughout the movie, they're faced with, do we protect the stone or do we protect the person? And they always are, at least to the best of their ability, trying to choose the person until they absolutely can't.
Yeah, like with Captain America and Vision, when
he's like, that's not even this is
we don't
a
trade
conversation.
lives. Yeah,
it's a debate, but it's not really a debate. And for him, he certainly doesn't want to do it, but he doesn't hesitate for that long.
Yeah.
He just is like, oh, I got to do this, and like steels himself for it, but he doesn't have second thoughts.
Yeah.
So there's a contrast there, which is good. Kind of sets them apart, and they have to. We see them both making those choices, and one picking the other.
Yeah.
One other thing that I thought may set this apart from a lot of other movies is, with the stakes as high as they are, I think it could have been very easy, or at least tempting, to focus a lot on the scale of the snap at the end. Mm-hmm. And we really don't. We feel it a lot more because we see each of the individual characters dying one by one. That's something that really doesn't happen a lot. Like, normally, you have a mass genocide. You'll see
everybody turn to dust.
Yeah, we could have seen, like, I don't know, you compare that to something like Kingsman, when they're like all like the whole world's fighting each other. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
When that happens, we see like there's the one scene where like Eggsy's mom is going and trying to kill
the child. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like a big personal moment. But like a quarter of the scenes are that, and the other ones are like there's like a beach, a baseball game, and like one other place. So it focuses a lot more on the scale. Whereas here we have it's the characters, and then we get like the one shot of the Wakandans dying, but it's like one shot, and then it's right back to the heroes, and then the post-credit scene we kind of see like a little bit of the like how it happened on like a mass scale, but it's an afterthought.
I think what definitely helped that is because they already discussed this scale, like earlier in the movie. Like he's trying to destroy half of all life.
Yeah, and it's random too, which I think is helpful. Like because again, comparing to Kingsman, like in that movie, it's not like he's just killing randomly. He's killing like
people's cell phone, the new cell phone he put out or something like that.
Yeah, but he gives like the top 1% basically, or it's not necessarily the 1%, but it's like powerful people a way out, and so it's obviously very selective. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Thanos, he's like very fair about it, and like he's all about balance, and he's not being hypocritical here. It's like literally half of everyone indiscriminately. Although I did wonder though, like,
do you think it's true he could have snapped himself out of existence?
That was exactly what I was going to ask. Like, was he flipping a coin on himself too? In that sense too, that is a parallel to another pretty good villain is Harvey Dent, who does exactly that on a one-by-one basis. Personally, I think Harvey Dent does it a bit better in The Dark Knight. I feel him as a bit more of a fleshed-out character, but two pretty solid villains. Like, if you're going to steal from the best. So
I think what also helped, well, it wasn't actually Infinity War, but what helped the scale was seeing, like, did you see the Endgame trailer?
I've seen a few of them.
There's like a lot of shots of like empty stadiums and streets and everything, like showing like the aftermath of the snap. And then there was also like a shot of, I think it was Bruce Banner. He was looking at a screen, and the number of humans was like 3.5 billion or something like that.
I guess that would make sense.
Yeah.
Like, although I suppose, like, I was wondering that too because he said half the universe. It's not necessarily how much is half. Like, did some planets get like maybe a quarter of the people die, and other ones it's like everyone, or like I don't know. Is it only you or your roommate that die, or can you both make it out?
Yeah.
Like,
do you know if half of the Avengers died? I didn't count, but it seemed to look like a little more than half of them died.
I think maybe it is a little more than half.
Okay.
I haven't done the exact math on it, but I thought it would have been interesting at first glance. I was like, what if they just like picked out of a hat, like who survived? But obviously it's intentional because you've got all 6 of the original ones that survived and probably like may or may not make it out of Endgame alive, or like they'll be finished at that point because they've been doing it for 10 years or whatever.
I'm scared for Captain the most, I think. Chris Evans like signed off on Twitter. He was like, I've had a wonderful time playing this character, so I'm a little...
You think he's not coming? I mean...
Yeah, I don't... Either he's not making it out, or he's like retiring or something within the movie or something.
Well, I think it would be very in character for him to like be the one to take the fall.
Yeah.
Or like him and Tony Stark, because like that would kind of... One of their first interactions is, I think Captain America's like, you wouldn't be the guy to lay out on the line and like let someone else crawl over you, and Tony Stark's like, yeah, I'd probably just cut the wire, like I wouldn't be the one to do that. And that could definitely be brought to completion in Endgame. I don't think they're all making it out alive. I really hope not to be like morbid about it, but just I really want to see Marvel be able to actually kill off a character, because they've faked us out so many times.
And that's true with comics in general. Like, deaths are never permanent in comics.
Oh, yeah. Nick Fury dies like 3 times in Winter Soldier, I think, or like dies in quotes.
Yeah.
And we already know he's coming back from the Spider-Man trailer, which is, something else that I kind of think it lessens the impact of this movie, is that, like...
We know they're coming back.
Right, like... And I understand the marketing campaign for Spider-Man is, something they should probably jump on. But then again, like, when we see characters that at this point in the timeline are dead and they're already back, it's like, okay, I still want to see Endgame to see what's going to happen. But it's like, it would be nice if we actually could think that they're dead.
I was actually a little nervous when I saw Captain Marvel. They showed, like, Captain Marvel showing up at the Avengers base once remember the pager that Fury?
Right, yeah.
She shows up at the base. I was actually a little nervous that she wouldn't show up, because I know she's supposed to be like somewhat of a saving grace because she's like super powerful. But I think they added her because I heard there are rumors that Black Panther and Captain Marvel are supposed to be the next 2 like leads into the next phase.
Okay, kind of taking over for like Iron Man and Captain America.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they would be good to lead it. Definitely Black Panther. Like, I didn't see Captain Marvel, but as like a natural leader, Black Panther's a very obvious choice.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, like, that movie made tons of money.
Yeah, that'll definitely help them with
and was one of the better ones in my standalone movies, in my opinion.
Even though a lot of people argue, I keep saying people, but there's just randoms I talk to. But,
well, it's people.
Yeah. Some people I've spoke to didn't like the movie because they said it didn't have an impact.
Black Panther?
Yeah, with as far as like the whole Marvel everything, like
I thought that was totally okay.
Yeah.
Because you didn't like. I think it was great that you didn't have to have seen anything
to watch this. Yeah, exactly. You didn't have to see anything prior to watch Black Panther.
Yeah, because something like I don't know, like even something like Doctor Strange. Like, would you go see just Doctor Strange?
I actually wasn't going to until my roommates invited me out.
Well, I mean, I was kind of thinking of it as not a Marvel fan.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I would. Even then, like, I was Marvel fan back then, but even I was like, this is probably a pass.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I guess in terms of the like getting caught up, I don't know how important that one is. I did see that one.
Important either.
Yeah, I did see it, but I don't feel like it. I felt like I could have skipped that. But yeah, I think like Black Panther was good that they didn't do that, because a lot of non-MCU fans went and saw that.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, the trailer for that, like, I remember watching the trailer and I wasn't sure if I was going to see it yet, but I was like, I don't care how good this movie is because this is the best trailer I've seen.
Yeah, that trailer
in
got
years.
So like I searched for weeks just trying to find the music for that.
Oh
trailer.
yeah, same. I have the like not the trailer, just the music from the trailer.
Yeah, exactly.
Saved as
Exactly.
like a
Without,
YouTube video because there's nowhere else to listen to it. But
exactly.
It's so sick that soundtrack for it.
Like
just the trailer. I wasn't actually huge on the soundtrack for
the movie. Yeah.
I mean, they did a good job on it. Just won an Oscar, but it was. I was kind of hoping for a little more of what we got in the trailer.
Yeah. But that trailer was. Oof.
Yeah, it's gonna be a while before we. I mean, the trailer for Infinity War was pretty good too, but like in terms of just like, I mean, you didn't need a trailer. You could have put no trailers out for Infinity War, and about the same amount of people would have showed up.
Pretty much.
I mean, the trailer was a huge draw for me on Black Panther.
Okay.
I guess one thing we can say before we like wrap up, any quick Endgame predictions, because we're kind of doing this for a pre-Endgame thing.
I don't think they're gonna kill Thanos.
I would have thought they would, but I guess I would be interested to see how they would do it if they don't kill him.
Yeah.
Like where he goes afterward, because I've heard like it seems like they're going to kind of max out with Endgame. Like there will be more Marvel movies, but they're not going to try to top it, or at least like the next Avengers movie won't have. It'll kind of be like a reset a little bit. What do you think they'll do with Thanos if they don't kill him?
They might imprison him or something like that. I don't think he'll even if they don't kill him, I don't think he'll rise to power again. Like I feel like he'll just be like a cameo every now and then. Like, let's go see what Thanos thinks about this new villain.
Yeah, something like that. That is an issue I think they're going to have to deal with because like a lot of people have like he's obviously like everyone's favorite of the Marvel villains, and the other ones are not great. Even
I think they did get better towards the end, like with Killmonger from Black Panther.
He was good, but he was an exception for sure. Like most of them are even Loki in the first Avengers movie.
Yeah.
Like I like how he manipulates them a little bit, but otherwise he's very generic, and people kind of act like he's not.
He just likes to mess with people, just like that. He likes to mess with people because he likes to mess with people. But, like, that doesn't excuse him.
Right, and his whole thing with, like, he's very generic and, like, oh, I'm bringing peace, and it's like, they leave it at that because they don't want to take the time to give him an argument, which is okay. We're not there to see a great villain. We're there to see the heroes get together, and it delivered. So, I mean, it works, but I do think there's he's going to cast a long shadow on later Marvel villains.
I think they'll give a hint as to who the next big villain will be, and I'm really hoping for either Doctor Doom or Galactus, both Fantastic Four villains.
So that's going to be tough to pull off. Then my next question was going to be when you said that, like who else is there? Because I don't know any.
Yeah, they're two like pretty heavy hitters. Like Galactus, I think I don't know, like, if Galactus is stronger than Thanos, but he's like, you remember Rise of the Silver Surfer? Like,
a little.
He was like the giant cloud thing. Like, he doesn't actually look like that in the comics. He's this giant planet-eating, like, humanoid being.
Oh, yeah. Wow, okay, that's, yeah.
So I think they're gonna, especially now that they have, like, a little access to the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, I think they're gonna either do something crazy like him or somebody like as powerful as like Doctor Doom is not physically powerful. He kind of is, but he's very intellectual, and I feel seeing him in an MCU like the next Avengers movie would be pretty insane.
Okay, I don't know if I'll be paying to see that. I might max out at Endgame, but I don't know if I have any predictions. I will be curious to see how they pull it off. Like, I'm not really that interested in what's going to happen. I'm more interested in, like, how are they going to turn the tables back and bring everyone back to life and whatever. And especially who's going to die, I think is... Like, I think having a true Marvel death, that could be a very powerful moment. That might be good to see.
I think Captain America... like, I'm scared for both Captain America and Iron Man, and maybe Hawkeye as well.
Yeah, well, Hawkeye's been dead weight since the word go. He's an okay character, but everyone's kind of like, you're not really in the same league here.
But I think I'm a little more scared for Captain America because I feel like Iron Man has a little bit more of a future because of how they set it up with Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah. And he's like, you might be starting a family with Pepper and everything.
Yeah, and that. I was scared for him in the trailer, but I'm speculating Captain Marvel's going to save him. And that's how they'll introduce her into the movie.
Yeah, that seems to be a popular theory.
And they didn't show what happened with Nebula and him. Like, they were together. I don't know where she went.
Right. She's still alive, though, I'm pretty sure.
But, I was a little scared for him in the trailer when he was just sitting alone in that ship. And I'm like, wait, they wouldn't throw a curveball at us and just actually leave him out there to die in space now, would they?
I mean, I don't think they'll do that.
Because with the other trailers, they kind of like, it seems like they deconfirmed that theory.
Yeah, because he's like back on Earth with the rest of them.
But
so
they did that
like
with, they digitally, I said that weird, but they digitally added Hulk to the Infinity War trailer.
Oh yeah,
and he never turned into Hulk in the actual movie. He was in the Hulkbuster suit.
Right. I heard a theory. I forget who was telling it to me because I remember calling that out. I was like, that shot in the trailer wasn't in it. And they said, okay, but since it's a two-parter, maybe that will be a shot that they bring back in Endgame where like they redo the whole Wakanda battle and Thor goes for the head and whatever. Yeah. Anyway, if that's everything.
Yep.
All right, so for our next episodes, well, I guess first, we're now on iTunes for one thing. You can leave comments and ratings there. And you can request movies for us to do later and, suggestions for other things. And you can leave ratings there. Also, if you have like kind of longer questions or comments, you can email me at erw58@drexel.edu. Where can people reach you? If you're open for questions.
Oh gosh. I'd say maybe Instagram or something.
Instagram? Okay, so at
Based Phoenix, BASED PHOENIX.
Okay.
All one word, lowercase.
Yeah. And other quick things, thanks to Isabella Akhtarshanas for doing the logo. And if you want stickers, you can contact either me or Carla and ask us for one. For upcoming episodes, we're doing Amelie pretty soon, and then there will be a bigger one maybe a couple months down the line on Harry Potter. Might be one to send in comments for.
Subscribe to the podcast. I did.
Oh, on iTunes? Yeah. Oh, I forgot that was a feature you can use. Yeah, so do subscribe to the podcast. And Jay, thanks for joining us. And
Thank you
we'll
for
be
having
back with another episode.